Years ago, when I used to roam around bookstores, I would find myself in the literature aisle. Typically, I went to bookstores to buy art books or biographies, but I'd be curious about other sections of the store, and I would end up in the literature aisle, and I would see Balzac. Now, I became interested in Balzac from the artist Auguste Rodin. He did a great sculpture of Balzac. He did several versions of this Balzac, of Honoré de Balzac, or as the French say, Honoré de Balzac. And on the Balzac one, I always liked it, and I knew he was one of the primary French authors. I have read Marcel Proust's work, and I'd heard that he was based on Balzac. So my knowledge of French literature is I read Proust, and I have some other videos on my channel about Proust. I have read Chateaubriand, Memoirs from the Grave, excellent book. I like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Lost Illusions, I started the book. The first 70 pages were kind of a slog. I did see some similarities in the way that Proust writes, and that Balzac, he does some kind of what I call prep work. He explains the details of the city. This is a city called Angoulême in France, and he describes the city. He does some general observations about the society, and then he brings in the characters. He spends a lot of time telling these observations about the situations, and then he has a scene where he brings the characters in. So what I call it is he prepares for a scene, and then he has the scene where there's dialogue, and then it has more meaning because he's done all this preparation work. So Proust does the same thing. Obviously, Proust came after Balzac, so I see where Proust was influenced by Balzac. In these first 70 pages, you can just feel the strength of Balzac's storytelling abilities. He's like a beefy oarsman rowing this story forward, introducing characters, introducing the plot, introducing the background, introducing the imagery of what's going on in these scenes. He also, he does interesting things, like he talks about the fashion. Like pretty much every character, he tells you the clothes they wear, top to bottom. And I had to look up some of these clothes because I don't know what a waistcoat is or a cravat or, some of these items of clothing that they wore. But after about 70 pages, I finally started to get into the story. So let's talk about the city. It starts in a French city called Angoulême in the west side of France. And he introduces characters, Madame Barjatin. He introduces David and Eve and Lucien. Lucien, at this point, they're all just characters in Angoulême. Lucien, towards the end of the first part, it becomes clear that Lucien is the main character of the story. Balzac writes about the characters' motivations and their goals. They're often kind of cynical things about people. Soon after part 2 begins, Lucien moves from Angoulême to Paris. Lucien's goals are to become an author, but it becomes apparent how difficult it is to be an author and a poet in Paris when you're young and unknown. Balzac goes into a long section about journalism in Paris at this time. It's after Napoleon, and it's like 1820s. Journalism is really starting to grow. It's a very unregulated industry. People do whatever they want to do, and people are insulting each other and having duels. It's just super reckless. Balzac has a very cynical view of it and talks about how corrupt it is and all of the misuse of power. So for me, I follow journalism. I am very interested in journalism, and this was great, a little history of journalism through Balzac's eyes. So I enjoyed this part, but it was a long section about journalism. If you're not into journalism, this is going to be tough. Some of the things that Balzac was writing about journalism could be true today, and I really enjoyed that kind of synchronicity between my views of journalism and his views of journalism 200 years ago. So Lucien sees how difficult it is to get his books published. He has a novel and he has a book of poetry. He makes some friends there who are very honest and hardworking, idealistic Frenchmen. But he's not making much progress. And then he meets a journalist. And around page 300, the first great scene of the book, which I consider, where Lucien's in Paris and he has a big banquet with after his first great success with the liberal press. They have a banquet in the apartment of the woman who he's in love with, and she's an actress, and it's all very colorful. It's really an amazing scene. It seems very authentic. This scene is outstanding. So to generalize, Lucien writes the inflammatory article in the liberal press, and the monarchical press meet with Lucien. Lucien has a desire to use his family name to move forward in society. And one of the ways you can do this is Lucien's family name used to be part of the aristocracy. And if he could get his name recognized by the King of France, he could improve his movement in society. Once your name is kind of part of the aristocracy, I don't know exactly how it all works, but once your name is part of the aristocracy, you can get these high positions in France. So, and you can make a lot of money. So the thing that happens to Lucien is it becomes kind of an apparent that while at the beginning he was very into becoming part of culture, writing novels, being an author, he kind of changes his focus and gets into power and money and getting revenge. People write mean things about him and he wants to get revenge. And so his motivations change. So he kind of has he has one foot in the liberal press and he has one foot in the monarchical press, and both sides can see what he's doing, and he turns out to be a corrupt person because he kind of gets caught in this game between the two, and he thinks he's so smart that he's going to be able to outwit everybody, but he doesn't, and both sides just take him out. They just brutally, he's very young, and they've been doing this for many years, so they just take him out, and he has a downfall. That's where part 3 ends. So around page 480, Lucien's world has fallen apart. He leaves Paris, and then Balzac goes back to some of the characters in Anglo-M, David and Eve, and he spends the next 150 pages developing a concurrent story that was happening in Anglo-M while Lucien was in Paris. Once Lucien leaves his story, boy, that was tough because I liked Lucien. Picks up a concurrent story that was going on between David and Eve. Now, this is a story of legal battles and familial things between David and his father, and there's all these financial transactions. Now, in Paris, when Lucien was negotiating for all these jobs in the press, Balzac keeps bringing up all these financial transactions. 200 francs here, and you'll learn 50 francs there, and he would go back and forth, and so it was kind of annoying. But when he gets back to this part 3, financial transactions, it's really annoying, very annoying. And I tried to keep track of it, but at a certain point, I just got fed up with all these transactions, and also he does all these if transactions. You know, here's the transaction if you sell this and buy this, and then he goes, but if you do this, this transaction. So he's got all these imaginary transactions and real transactions, and then all at once he kind of wraps it all up. And it's like, poof, it's all gone. And I guess it had some kind of great meaning in the story, but it was lost on me because it was just way too complicated. It was just ridiculously complicated, these financial transactions. So that was a disappointment. And I didn't really care much about David and Eve, and I thought that their part of the story could have been written a little better. They could have made those characters just a little more interesting. David was kind of a one-note character, and his wife was a one-note character, and then there's all these other characters. The diversity of the characters was good, but the development of each character was poor. So finally, Lucien returns to the story. He returns to Anglo-Am, and he's kind of been shamed. But his novel and his poetry was published in Paris, so he's celebrated in Anglo-Am for this. It doesn't really mean much because he had such a downfall there and loss of fortune and all these other complicated things. So he is so kind of disgusted with himself that he leaves Anglo-Am and he meets a Spanish diplomat, and boy, the book really picks up. It just gets illuminated. There's a fantastic scene with Lucien and this Spanish diplomat where the diplomat explains all these things to Lucien, and it just is so illuminating. Really like that part. Then Balzac wraps up the story with David and Eve, and then the book ends. Thanks for watching.